Welcome, everyone. We're going to give it another 30 seconds or so for folks to trickle in. All right, terrific. Well, let's get started. I know folks will be joining us throughout the hour. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to this Carnegie Chronicle of Higher Education webinar. This session is designed to be a candid, forward-looking conversation for senior leaders navigating online growth amid shifting learner expectations, brand pressures, and emerging technologies like AI. I'm thrilled to welcome the over 500 registrants who are joining us from all over the world. Included today in our audience are presidents and chancellors, senior administrators and directors of enrollment, marketing, student success, and faculty and academic chairs. So welcome to all of you and thank you for making time. I know it's a busy time in the semester and really thrilled to have the opportunity to have our discussion today. Before I kick off, I want to just cover a couple quick housekeeping items to ensure that today's webinar runs as smoothly as possible. So the first is that our webinar is going to be recorded and slides will be shared via email later this week. So be on the lookout for that in your inboxes. The second is that we want to make this webinar, as interactive as possible for our panelists. So if you have a question, we're going to encourage you throughout today's webinar to drop your question in the Q&A box in your Zoom window. I will try to bring those questions into our discussion both during the conversation and certainly at the end. Finally, to ensure accessibility for all of our guests today, I want to just remind us that closed captions are available. The icon to enable them is in the control panel at the bottom of your Zoom window, so please take advantage of that if necessary. So wonderful. Just by way of introduction, let me kick us off. My name is Shankar Prasad. I have the great privilege of serving as the Chief Strategy Officer at Carnegie Higher Education. Carnegie is a higher ed solutions firm that partners with institutional leaders on campuses, colleges, and universities around the world to address their biggest challenges of today and tomorrow. Prior to joining Carnegie, I had the privilege of serving on campus for 15 years, most recently for the last decade as Dean and Vice President for Online Innovation at Brown University. And so the conversation that we're going to have today is really near and dear to my heart and really excited about having that discussion with you all as well. I'm really excited to introduce our illustrious panelists today. We have a wonderful group of senior leaders and administrators who really represent the diversity of higher education in our landscape. So let me start by introducing President Mark Lombardi. President Lombardi is the President Emeritus at Maryville University, where he served in that leadership role between 2007 and 2025. President Lombardi is a recognized leader in higher education innovation, strategic growth management, and reinventing the collegiate model for the 21st century. During his tenure as Maryville's president, he grew the institution from a regional institution serving 3,000 students to a national institution with enrollments above 9,000 students from all 50 states in the country. Of particular relevance to today's conversation, President Lombardi oversaw the growth and launch of over 60 online degrees and the launch of the nationally recognized Maryville Works Workforce Development Program. Really excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us, President Lombardi.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Next, we have Kate Ledger. Kate is the Associate Vice President for Strategic Enrollment and Outreach at Old Dominion University. ODU similarly has been offering distance education courses and programs for more than 40 years and has long supported working adults, including the roughly 30% of students both online and on campus who work in the military. Kate herself specializes in aligning storytelling, branding, and mission to build trust and engagement and drive enrollment outcomes. And prior to joining ODU, she served for over 20 years in enrollment and marketing at University of Pittsburgh. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Course. And then finally, we have Dean Angie Kalmuth. Angie is the Dean of NYU's School of Professional Studies, overseeing a diverse portfolio of programs at the associate, bachelor, and master's and continuing education levels, serving learners at multiple career stages. Her expertise centers on workforce development and skills-based training. Prior to joining NYU in the leadership role at SPS, she served as the University Dean for Continuing Education and Workforce Programs at CUNY and in the New York City Department of Small Business Services. Welcome, Dean Kalmuth. It's great to have you as well.
Thank you so much.
So I'm really thrilled that we get to turn over to our panel discussion shortly, but I thought what I would do is spend a couple minutes to set the stage. And I wanted to focus on some research that Carnegie was able to commission and complete at the end of Q4 and 25 as a way to really animate the discussion that I'm hoping to have today. Carnegie launched two studies towards the end of last year focused on understanding the shifting landscape of online education. One study really focused on online learners with the goal of understanding in this moment where we're seeing an explosive amount of growth of online education programs, really offered by many colleges and universities around the world. We wanted to understand how online learners are navigating the shifting landscape and what drives and motivates them to make the decision and the types of programs that they're able to pursue, and as they make these choices and decisions of as part of their own professional journey. So that was one. We brought in 10,500 respondents from really a diverse set of backgrounds, walks of life, professional stages of their own careers. And we're able to bring some of those insights into the research that we're going to talk about today. At the same time, we launched a online leader study, which looked at a number, over 145 senior leaders, to better understand how senior leaders were navigating this shifting landscape as well. How were they thinking about building institutional prioritizations and strategies around online education, and how are they responding to the shifting demands from here? And the insights from this research are really what's going to animate the discussion today. I want to quickly just note, unsurprisingly, that what our research uncovered is that we're really at this critical moment, and that online education is really at a moment of inflection. The scale and the level of sophistication of online programs is growing tremendously. There's an increasing diversity of online learners and the motivations that are driving them to choose this program. And institutional leaders, those of you on this call, are facing and acknowledging the tension that you're seeing in this moment of explosive growth. You're seeing enrollment and revenue pressure. You're thinking about brand stewardship, and you're doing all of this oftentimes with limited staffing, limited budgets, limited infrastructure. And so we want to sort of use that frame to set the stage of today's discussion. Three really interesting findings, points of tension or opportunities as we see them, that we found from the analysis. Really seen as an opportunity to align institutions to align these key opportunities across brand, AI usage, and who online learners are and what they're seeing from here. And again, I'm going to use these 3 points of tension as we get into our panel discussion with our guests today. Just as a quick highlight, um, the first finding that we saw was really looking at the tension between how institutions think about storytelling in terms of their programs. What I found really interesting as we looked at the research results was that almost all of our respondents talked about the fact that they were trying to understand better the story of the institution, its brand, its mission in the programs that they offer, that was a key driver in how they were making decisions about which program to attend. And yet, despite the importance of brand in this decision-making process, only 42% of leaders said that strengthening brand for online programs was a priority. So I'm looking forward to unpacking that tension with our guests today and understanding how they're navigating that mismatch or that opportunity on their own campuses. Finding two, unsurprisingly, was around AI. I mean, you can't escape the importance of AI in anything that we're looking at today, and this certainly emerged as a finding from our research from this study. What again we found a really interesting sort of point or opportunity or tension between our learners and our leaders. Whereas learners are looking to see AI integrated in how they learn and being prepared for the world of work once they graduate, leaders were still struggling to understand how to take advantage of the AI moment, both in terms of seeing AI as a disruptive force in the classroom, trying to navigate challenges associated with cheating, and also developing strategic plans to understand sort of how to think about AI both pedagogically and in the delivery of their coursework as well. And again, really excited to talk to our guests about this tension and sort of how they're navigating this work on their own campuses. And finally, one of the most interesting things that we found from this study was again this tension between how diverse the online learner population is. As we were going through this research finding, as I was reflecting on my own time leading online education at Brown University, and the tendency to think about online as sort of a monolith, right? All online learners are the same. What we uncovered instead from our research was that there's an enormous amount of diversity in terms of the backgrounds of learners, in terms of the motivations that they have for pursuing online education, in terms of understanding what they were looking at as the driving force of choosing between online programs. And our research uncovered that there's actually 11 distinct online profiles that really make up what the online learner population looks like. And yet, oftentimes as institutional leaders, we look at online as, again, sort of one body or one force from here. So understanding the diversity of these online learners is incredibly important. The tension we found, however, is that despite how complex the online learner landscape is, institutions are really struggling from a resource perspective. They don't have the adequate staff. They are supporting a large number of programs that are growing, and that they've seen a significant amount of growth and emphasis in online importance at their own institutions over the last 3 to 5 years. So again, trying to balance this need to be more sophisticated, need to provide a more nuanced understanding of who your learners are, while managing the sort of constrained resources that we also we all know so well from our own institutional backgrounds. So a lot going on here, a lot to uncover. That was a quick highlight of what we thought were some of the most interesting findings from this study. I will invite all of you to download this analysis and dive in. There's about 300 pages of analysis and a ton of data here. So here's the QR code for you. Please take advantage of that, and we'll make sure we send out this information by email as well. So with that, I want to turn to our panel today and jump into our discussion. So let me stop sharing. Excellent. Great. Mark, Kate, Angie, welcome. Great to see you all. Thank you for joining us again. Really excited about the discussion that we are going to have together. As a reminder, we're going to be monitoring the Q&A, so just invite you again. Attendees, please keep throwing your questions into there, and I'll bring those into our discussion. But maybe what I can do to kick us off is to ask each of you to just give us a 2-minute overview of how your institutions are thinking about online education at this moment. What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the challenges you're facing? And Angie, why don't we start with you, and then I'll popcorn around this room.
Excellent. So just to set the stage, again, thank you so much for this conversation. The research was really, really helpful to kind of do that pairing of the leaders and the learners. For context, at the School of Professional Studies at NYU, we're one of 15 schools at the university. Many of our kind of individual schools have online programs, but I'll mainly talk about the programs within the school that I oversee, SPS. What is so interesting about our school, so we have about 15,000 learners at our school, 5,000 seeking degrees, 10,000 in the continuing education space. And we've been doing online probably for about 25 years. We started out kind of our big roots were in the continuing education space. Today, out of our 5,000 learners, about 1,500 are online learners. And what I think is interesting, and maybe the angle that I'll bring to this call, different from Mark and Kate, is that of the 1,500 online learners, only about half of them are fully online or are choosing fully online programs. The other half are actually kind of fully registered as in-person students, but they are very focused on flexibility. And so they really are opting in to say, this is a semester or these 2 semesters are places where I just need to work. I've got a lot of responsibilities. So I'm going to be kind of a fully online student, but I plan on kind of coming back in that short summer term or kind of elsewhere. And so we have online programs with residencies. We've got fully online programs. We've got partly online programs. We have a lot of kind of variation, which I think is interesting. And last thing I would say is, when we often talk at NYU about our vocational endowment, meaning New York City is largely what makes our university, I think, really attractive to so many. And then secondarily, our global network, where we have kind of direct campuses in 15 cities across the world. And so when we think about our online strategy, the journey, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the journey that we have traveled on this is let's go after the market. We should be doing online because that's the innovation, to let's really kind of be smart about tapping into these kind of locational endowments and really thinking about that that might not be for everyone. Might not be the kind of scale player in the majority of our programs, but if we can offer something that's really differentiated based on kind of who we are and what kind of makes NYU really special, that's the place for us to focus. So I'll stop there, but it has been quite a journey, I'm sure my colleagues will share their own kind of evolutions, but it's a really interesting and important place where we are right now. And I often like to say, like, if you know one online learner, you sort of know one online learner. You've boiled it down to 11, but I think the uniqueness and that personalization is, I'm sure, a theme that's going to come up in this conversation.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Angie. And just the sort of the need for flexibility, even as you think about the various definitions of online or traditional, right, is like is really sort of you know, you're reimagining that in real time. So thanks for that perspective. Mark, talk to us about Maryville University and how online education has shaped the work you all have been doing there.
Well, Maryville has been very, as other institutions represented, very involved in adult education for years and years, and really moved in earnest in the online space about 12 to 15 years ago. And a lot of it initiated in the healthcare area, particularly in nursing, which is really proven and still proves for Maryville to be a real key to its growth and success. But I think what's evolved over time, and again, I'm recently retired, so I'm speaking a little bit about the recent past. But what's really evolved is this: everyone is an online learner today. It doesn't matter if you're in high school, 18-year-old attending football games and in-person classes, or you're 30-year-old single mom looking to change your life. Everyone is learning online. It just really matters the balance and the measure, and sometimes it's a lot and sometimes it's a little, and it's back and forth in and out. And I think what the research shows, as you've illustrated in part, is today's learner sees those boundaries as not boundaries really, but they're essentially part and parcel of the same experience and process. And what we, and I don't mean Maryville, I mean what higher ed has got to do is embrace that assumption concept so that we're not getting into false dichotomy debates about what's our brand and what's our story and what's our pitch, quote unquote, because online and on-ground learning, though these learners are diverse, they have a variety of expectations and needs. And the stories or the stories that we tell need to reflect that and not some boundary or demarcation. And so what Maryville's been able to do and continues to do has really harnessed, and we'll get into this a little later, harness a lot of the work of AI to really greatly deepen and expand the story and the relationship with learners, whether they're predominantly in an online format or not. And that's something that I think is clearly front and center on the frontier going forward.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to picking up that the discussion about AI. But you know, two things that really resonate, Mark, from your quick introduction here is one, this idea that everyone's an online learner. So how do we think about serving all of these learners regardless of where they are and what they're looking for? And two, exactly to what we found in this research, this idea that mission matters, again, regardless of modality. Students are choosing you, your story, the mission, sort of, and looking for that alignment, regardless again of where they are in the world. And I think that's super fascinating. So looking forward to coming back to that. Kate.
Hi, Shankar. So thanks again for having me today. Old Dominion University, long history in online, as you mentioned in the introduction. ODU Global began by delivering education via satellite to Navy ships. We are located near the world's largest naval base, and so this very natural progression of naval ships and education and military, which we still remain very strongly rooted in, moved to community colleges around Virginia and having a physical presence on those campuses. And now, of course, everyone is online, and we are as well. We have about 7,300 learners, all fully online. So those are not what we would call hybrid, or we do have on-campus students who take online courses, but we focus fully. We have over 120 programs and growing that are offered fully online. And so that, I think, really deep-rooted history in service to this particular population is really important. And we'll talk more today about the differences in the brand, but we do, and your research showed, I believe, the real importance of the Old Dominion University faculty teaching in that space, right? We're not hiring adjuncts. We don't use an OPM. We really believe very strongly because our brand is rooted in who we are, and we see that come through in how we serve and educate and teach our students. So it's been a real joy to be part of an institution that believes this is part of growth. I go to a lot of conferences, and oftentimes groups like ours feel like stepchildren, or, like we want to see this grow, but they're not resourced to grow. And I would say that at Old Dominion University and with our leadership, we really feel positioned to do this well, and to help the university grow.
That's great. Thanks, Kate. Let's actually stay on the ODO story. And really, I'd love to spend some more time thinking about the work that you've been doing around ODU Global. And just to remind us again from the research, one of the things I found really interesting was that almost every learner said they were choosing the brand, they were choosing story as they thought about decision making, looking at the landscape of online programs. And yet less than half of leaders said that they were really thinking about brand sort of specifically or prioritizing brand in their online programs. So ODU Global within the context of ODU, I think is a really fascinating story. So I was wondering if you could just deep dive a little bit in talking to us about the decisions that went into creating this separate brand of ODU Global, what's resonated with learners in doing that work. And when you think about ODU Global, what is the story that you want online learners to remember when they think about ODU or Old Dominion University more broadly?
Sure. So I think I'll actually start with the last question in terms of what is the story. When we did the research, it was very clear. And when I joined ODU 2.5 years ago, it was very clear that ODU Global is a high touch institution. Our students work with our staff throughout this process. It's our advising staff. So you're not necessarily transferred to a campus-based advisor. You're working with an online advisor who understands life, right? We often say we're not competing with the school down the street. We're competing with careers and deployment and caregiving, right? And all of those things. And so having an advising staff that truly believes that and is able to help you manage life in that way is really important to us. And so as we started to gather the data and see that brand piece really emerge, we knew that had to be at the center of how we talk about ourselves. We also knew high touch and high tech were going to be hand in hand, right? And we're going to talk about AI today, but that is also an area where our leadership is investing. And we're thinking about how to do this at every point in the funnel. So those two things combined really set the stage for how we serve, again, our audiences. And while, a campus brand is just that, it's a campus brand. Ours is a coastal location. We have a lot of shared similarities, right? Research One, public institution, outstanding faculty, and some of those things carry through. But as we talk more about audience specification and personalization, we really need to lean into who we are as an online institution, not just sort of at that ground level. But you do want to see those two things connected. So it's been really great to have a solid platform for both, to understand where we do cross and then where we are separated and distinct and unique, and push that brand out into the market more nationally compared to regionally.
Yeah, really, really interesting work that you all are doing there. Angie, I'm curious because I look at the context of NYU, global university, as you noted, multiple campuses. You think about NYU in the context of New York City, and again, there's just multiple schools, multiple programs. So I'm curious how you're thinking about NYU SPS in the context of this broader sort of NYU brand story. And again, thinking about the kind of story that you want your NYU SPS students to be thinking of as they're part of this larger community.
Sure. So we engaged in kind of some brand strategy work about 4 or 5 years ago. We did the work, we kind of talked to the prospective students or alumni, industry, and what resoundingly came back from every single segment and subsegment was we are known for practical, real world applied learning. Folks are coming to us for our scholar practitioners. We actually 92% of our instructional capacity is through adjuncts who are sort of the professor of practice model. And we're really, really proud of that. And so our commitment, our brand promise to students is we help guide students to thrive in the real world. We're super proud of that, helping students to thrive in the real world. And so as it relates to kind of the online learner, Everything's under the brand, kind of in person, all of our programs continuing at, it's about thriving in the real world. And so the differentiation, I would say, in terms of, and that's different really from the rest of NYU. Every school at NYU kind of has the tagline of sort of using New York City as its classroom. So we don't have the lot of experiential, but that real world applied, taught by scholar practitioners is what we really are kind of focused in on. So consulting projects that are real business cases, that's kind of what makes up the core of all of our courses. And so I think that's where we've really started to lean in with online learners to sort of say, we don't have to kind of chase our tails. We don't have to chase what is innovative or what the market research says. Our online learners are coming to us because they really want that network of NYU professionals, kind of both in the classroom and kind of as alumni. They're coming to us because they want to tap into all of the industries that we partner with within New York City. They want to tap into us because they will become a better global professional by taking advantage of our work, because so many of our faculty and kind of the case studies that we bring are extremely global in terms of what we do. And so those are the ways that we do it. As I'm thinking about a new branding for our online learning that's going to launch this spring, the tagline is essentially, this is your time. And the notion of kind of going after that person who wants the real world experience, wants that global perspective, wants scholar practitioners, but who's had a really busy life, or who has a really busy life, right? Well, for whatever reason, whether they're a working learner, whether they've got caregiving, whether they're returning or degree completion, the notion of this is your time to be the person who thrives in the real world by being our student. That's kind of how we're playing around with the brand definition. So it doesn't feel like two separate brands per se, but we're really trying to just lean into that kind of real world practical. And what I'll say, and we don't have a price differential. Our price point is high, to be candid, right? And so what we sort of say is, okay, we're not going to kind of, there's many high quality online programs that will beat us every day of the week on price. And what we're going to do is really make sure that we're putting as much possible value into our degree, that we're connecting folks on that career connectedness through network building, through skills and portfolio development. And that's what we're doing. Again, that could be tested. And I know that kind of colleagues have different approaches, but I think that we're trying to say, you're going to get that full NYU education. And we want you to come here. We want you to kind of but develop your networks in the same way that all of our students do. And that's kind of what you're going to get. And that's kind of how we're going to fulfill that brand promise.
Yeah, that's great. What I love about what we just heard was, Kate, you talked about ODU Global and the fact that you have a different model for faculty there. Angie, you talked about NYU SBS and different model. Both of you are sort of owning that approach, that brand, and sort of telling your story that way. And students have the opportunity to think about what they're looking for from those programs. So that really comes across. Mark, again, I think about the Maryville story. I'm so fascinated by it because you went from this regional institution to this kind of national brand. And so this idea of like how you think about your story on a national stage, how you think about competing against other programs with this kind of Maryville story is something that as president, I'm sure you thought about a lot. So wondering if you could just talk about this kind of tension on your own campus and your experience.
Well, I think it starts with something that Maryville has been and continues, I think, to be very, very good at, which is you start with the learner, not with the institution itself. I mean, we all, as educators, have all kinds of ideas. Me, particularly, with I'm the ancient one on this panel, so I've got decades of all this and preconceived notions about delivering education. But you start with the learner. You start with what are these people looking for? As we know, adult learners in general tend to be pretty utilitarian. They're looking to go from wherever they are in their lives to another place in their lives, and they want to do that in the most effective and efficient way possible, and the least stressful, at least with all the things outside of the learning experience, which can be at times very stressful for any learner, especially when you're going back to school and those kinds of things. So what we did was we took the approach of the service element of this has to be made Amazon-like. As much as possible, seamless and easy, evaluating transcripts in hours and not days and weeks, applications being waived and all kinds of things that were essentially stopgaps and literally impediments to learners moving forward, eliminating them as much as possible, if not completely. Again, for our discussion a little later, that's really where the applications of AI are absolutely essential to that process. But by doing that, creating an environment really where both at the undergraduate, but also at the graduate level, particularly in the health professions and other areas, where people could enter into this ecosystem fairly seamlessly. And once there, get the kind of responsiveness and service that allowed them to focus on the learning experience exclusively and not be, the worst thing in the world for any of us, we all know this, is entering into the medical ecosystem or the educational or any of these ecosystems and being run around and really poor service around all the things that are really tangential to what you're there to do, right? I mean, the last thing anybody wants to do is fill out 27 forms online before they actually get in to see a doctor or a professor or a therapist or whatever the case may be. So a lot of the Maryville approach really had to do with the service component. And that leads into the brand issue, which is branding the story. And the story is, and Maryville's brand has invariably been through many years on this, we're the partner, we're the ally of the learner. We're not the gatekeeper, and we're not the obstacle, and we're not judge, jury, and executioner either. We are your ally in this journey, and that messaging, which takes a tremendous amount of effort and time and consistency, is probably as much a part of Maryville's success in this as anything else.
Yeah, that's great. I loved your point about the sort of the 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 obstacles we put our students through to be able to like arrive at a program. And it's almost like, we're looking for the strongest to survive in this, and that shouldn't be the case given how seamless everything else is in terms of the consumer experience. Um, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about that identity gap or sort of opportunity that we looked at in our research. I have to say, I was sort of floored by this because, again, when I was in my role as dean at Brown, we thought about online and non-online, right? As like the kind of sort of like these two different groups here. And the fact that we need to be thinking about this as such a diverse audience, the 11 distinct profiles, 11 distinct sets of motivations, interests, needs that learners are looking for as they sort of navigate this it was really fascinating to me. And I can see the opportunity in that space. And so I thought maybe we could spend a couple minutes talking through that. And Angie, I wanted to kick off with you, again, because I think about the NYU SPS context. You have a broad portfolio, right? And so not only are you thinking about serving learners kind of across these different stages of their career, but now in terms of their own motivations across these. So that's a lot of sort of complexity. So just love to, and you and I've talked a little bit about this offline, but love to hear sort of how are you navigating this right now? How are you thinking about this content?
Yeah, when I think about the report, a couple of the personas really kind of landed quite well for me. And so we have a big segment of our online learner communities, community college transfer students.
Yeah.
And so that persona of kind of completing an undergraduate degree, wanting to work, being career curious, trying to really figure out where they fit in, wanting to develop their professional network, wanting to kind of explore skills is a really interesting and kind of growing group within our space. And so that was, that's an area that we spent a lot of time on. And I think part of our journey has been getting not just faculty. I would say that we probably over-indexed on kind of thinking about the learning and the curriculum and the classroom experience. And our student affairs folks were amazing. And when they do orientations, they kind of, it's the pep rally that you kind of imagine. But they're like, oh, we're live streaming it for our online students. And it's like, no, point, that's not the experience that we want. And so really thinking about that undergrad, that we don't want them to miss out on, some of those kind of quintessential kind of undergraduate experience pieces, even if they're working or kind of they're, not able to kind of come in for residencies or kind of big kind of rites of passage like that. We want to make sure that we're really focusing in on that. Another persona that really hit was that fully online student who's kind of changing their careers. And so that's been kind of a really interesting kind of group for us. And so we've got degrees in executive coaching and HR analytics, and kind of really just thinking about, I know my industry is changing, and what do I do to kind of get ahead of it? Our executive programs in marketing, our executive programs in sport management. It's really about these career professionals that are just looking to kind of be the early adopters and kind of learn what's kind of, happening. And so that's, it's really thrilling to teach students that are so curious, and the networks that are created within those programs are really special. And so those are some of the pieces that I think about. Some of my worries are folks um, who are degree completers, or they've been out of the kind of educational sphere for a long time and they really want to complete that degree, but they might have kind of more personalized needs in terms of tutoring, in terms of supports. That's an area that I think we have to spend a bit more time on. But we've got these segments that I think are really quite interesting. And, the piece that's most important that I want to develop out more is around alumni connections. The more and more that I speak to our students, they are so curious. They're like, I want to be connected to people like me. And again, it's not the monolith of, well, you have your class of online peers. No, they really want to kind of learn and kind of get connected. And it's hard. I mean, we have 700,000 living alumni at NYU. It is a task to find the person that really resonates. And so that's a piece that we're also focusing in on, because again, I think that's actually our value. That's what's going to get you the job. And particularly as we talk and think about AI, it is really disrupting kind of job acquisition, job searching, networking. And so that piece that we have such a robust alumni network, but we have to make sure we're not tying ourselves in knots in that identification and connection is something that we think about a lot for our online community and for our kind of traditional kind of in-person student community, but I think particularly for that online community.
700,000 living alumni. It's an extraordinary number there. It's sort of dizzying. Kate, how about you at ODU?
Well, I think what's key in all of this is that people expect personalization. And so any web experience we're having, any retail shopping, right? We just expect you have data on me, so deliver exactly what I'm looking for. And the longer it takes you to do that, the harder it is to do. And so when I think about this variety of types of learners, it is acknowledging as people visit the site that we need to understand a little bit more about you so that we can deliver a personalized experience. And using tools to do that in a very targeted way has been successful for us in driving conversions and getting students further down the funnel, helping them apply to very specific start terms. Maybe they're not ready right now, but they're going to be ready in 2 months. Or, you have to think about all those pieces. And when we're all built, well, I can say most of us are built on a very traditional campus year-long model. Shifting all of those things in this age of personalization is really important. So yes, the audience piece, it really gets at the heart of who we are, because we were built for a particular audience and then we shifted to a different audience and now we've expanded to serve many. So it's really helpful to have data to understand and to use the data that you have. We all have access to so much data. How can we use it to better serve the students, to Mark's point earlier about the importance of that service?
And I wonder if I could follow up just quickly. Are you explicitly thinking about this in your marketing materials right now as you think about these different profiles of learners? And again, a question for all of you, but just curious, like how's that showing up?
Absolutely. I mean, right. It's in what, certainly it's in the advertising. Definitely it's in web interaction, web personalization tools that we're using. Certainly email journeys, SMS, also in those individual conversations, right, that our staff are having. So I would say if, we're thinking about it at every step. There's not really too much sort of general broad, other than here's ODU Global.
Mhm.
Everything else, program, degree type, all of the things are really important.
Yeah, same. There's a question from Warnell in the chat in terms of the application process. And so one of the pieces that we launched maybe 2-3 years ago was instant decision days. And I think particularly for our online programs, just having the kind of virtual info sessions like that's not enough. I think, folks they want the information, they want the kind of, quick ideas. And so we actually kind of launched the notion of you can get an instant decision, and we kind of have them just about every month. You put together your information and we can kind of give you a quick response in terms of what you're looking for versus kind of hitting deadlines. I think we've found with our online learners, but really probably for all of our learners, there is an expectation that things are faster, right? There is an expectation, whether it's with AI or just with technology, that the customer experience is going to be frictionless. I mean, I really agree with Mark's point that some aspects of it are Amazon-like, not every aspect, but that customer experience part needs to be important. But we love our instant decision days. Our students love the instant decision days. And that is really something that folks can kind of figure out how to kind of squeeze that into kind of busy work lives. And so that's been helpful. And again, a form of personalization that feels good and feels like we want you, and we're going to kind of do everything we can to make that potential transition to become a student as easy as possible, but as personal as possible.
Yeah. There's a great question that just got submitted. Mark, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you probably lived this, so I'm going to ask you to think about it. Is this question about how do you get faculty buy-in for building online programs? My department has an online degree option. Most of my faculty dislike, myself included, dislike teaching online and find it onerous and unpleasant. This is an existential issue for us as our state system is looking to shut down programs that aren't growing fast enough. How do you make sense of that? How did you tackle this on your own campus?
Okay, if I'm gonna give you the straight skinny here. There are two things going into this, and I speak, before I went to the dark side of administration. Of course, I was a faculty member for many years. So let me say this. First of all, asking for buy-in ahead of time, that is asking for permission instead of forgiveness, is crazy. If you wait for consent, the thing that destroys innovation at every step of the way is the idea you're trying to achieve some kind of consensus. Consensus, forgive me, but is kind of like true love. It's a wonderful thing on the Hallmark Channel, but I'm not so sure it exists in fact. What we did was we started out in our nursing program, extremely difficult program, with board certification, the measure of success, external validation, the curriculum is dictated. It is one of the toughest programs there is. And we went to our nursing faculty, we said, look, we've got tremendous amount of nurses, potential nurses out there in rural and urban communities want to study. You want to reach them. Let's do this together. And because we knew that if we could deliver a high quality nursing program online, that I'm just going to say it, all the other faculty and all the other disciplines could never say, well, you can do that in nursing, but you can't do that in English. It just doesn't make any sense. And the nursing faculty at Maryville did a tremendous job. They were amazing. They still are. They delivered a program that literally our board pass rates were higher in the online program in several years, not every year, than they actually were on the on ground. So they did it. They pulled it off. And that really paved the way for the faculty to embrace online. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit, faculty were like, thank God we had embraced online and gone through the training and learned how to do it, because we were able to transition in that fairly seamlessly. But the key is not to ask, should we or shouldn't we? You'll be debating that forever. In fact, and by the way, I'm just going to say it, it's not right to ask a bunch of faculty like myself, educated in the mid to latter part of the 20th century, the permission to do online. The reality is we've got to do it. We've got to do it very, very well. How do we do it very, very well? And that's the key. And so it's not a question of buy-in, asking permission. It's really, we're going to do it now. Help us do this. And once we did that, I don't think there's a faculty member on the Maryville campus today, or has been for the last several years, who isn't a huge proponent of online, whether they teach in it or not, whether they enjoy it as much as on ground or not, and some enjoy one or the other more, they are definitely proponents because they saw it work.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. And thank you for the question. I actually think that's a really nice setup for our next topic, which is around AI, because I think a lot of institutions are struggling with this as well. As in the study, in my conversations with leaders right now across the country, there's this palpable sort of fear about sort of how to think about AI in terms of institutional strategy. It's changing rapidly, and trying to sort of catch up with that and come up with sort of a strategic plan for how it impacts education, teaching and learning, the kind of broader enterprise is something that institutional leaders are thinking about, constantly. I'm sure you all are as well. And yet at the same time, students expect it, right? The research shows that our students expect it in terms of how they're learning, in terms of what they learn, so they're set up for life, et cetera. Mark, Maryville has been a fascinating use case in terms of the use of AI to streamline the learning process, in terms of companion, in terms of, operational efficiency. I'd love for you to just speak a little bit about sort of, how you thought about this work. I mean, because you guys are really ahead of the game in many ways, but how you continue to do this work on your campus.
Sure. As I mentioned, we have this large nursing program. In fact, at the graduate level, about 1,000 nurses entering into the graduate pipeline. They're already nurses. They're looking to get their master's or their nurse practitioner graduate degrees. And we were finding that we were losing about 40% of them in the first two quote unquote gateway courses they were taking. And we were losing them for a variety of reasons. What we did was we worked to design what we call a social learning companion. All the social learning companion is, think of it this way if you're a faculty member, it's a 24/7 graduate assistant, never sleeps, never eats, never complains, don't have to pay it. And the social learning companion is filled with what? All the knowledge and information about the course that the faculty member basically loads in. So there's nothing in there more than just what is in the course. Here's what we found. We implemented it last year, a year and a half ago, actually. We reduced attrition by 35%. We increased the grade distribution where A's and B's were about 18%, and I believe the numbers, don't quote me, went up to something like 40%. No change no cheating. This wasn't a cheating AI device. This was simply an AI companion that was available morning, noon, and night to answer questions from students that maybe in class they wouldn't ask because they were embarrassed or something or other. So they would, and what happened was students gravitated towards it. It helped them. It was a study aid. It was like a grad assistant, as I said, on total call. And and nothing changing in the curriculum, nothing changing in the expectations. And we saw that kind of results. That research showed was that students need varying levels and degrees, that kind of constant support that AI can provide. A human being can't do it. Faculty member can't do it. Fellow peer student can't do it. And the usage, by the way, I won't drill down too much, was fascinating to see where you had students, there was a percentage of students using it between 1 and 4 a.m., a percentage using it, and all those things. And also we found that it empowered these students to get through, to realize they had the knowledge and the ability to get through. They just needed that support mechanism as the process went through. And it was revolutionary. And now Maryville's applying that in other venues and in other programs. My point about AI and that example is this: AI can be a powerful tool as an ally for student service and student learning and student emotional investiture in that learning process. And all it takes really is a partnership, if you will, with those that are, and in Maryville's case, the DLX group, which is the digital learning experience, which is Maryville's version of an IT department, had some incredibly cutting edge people who were working and developing that. And the power of it is, I think frankly, it's revolutionary for the future. I really do.
Just a quick follow-up question from one of the attendees today to Marival. Did you guys build your AI technology in-house? Did you partner and bring in external resources? Was it a combination of both?
Well, we put together what we did a few years ago. I can't remember the exact. We brought in a tremendous leader, Phil Cormani from Salesforce. He hired some people to bring in and then partnered with some external entities. So it was a mixture of both. It wasn't outsourcing and it wasn't all inside. It was a real mixture. But really, what the social learning companion is a very sophisticated chatbot is what it amounts to, but loaded in with all that information that faculty had about the course. Okay. So this isn't, guessing about pulling things out of Google or out of the air. This was faculty built in terms of the content and delivered by a system built by DLX. And in fact, to be honest with you, it's one of the things that I think Maryville is very proud of moving forward.
Thank you for that. Angie or Kate, I'd love to hear how you're thinking about it on your campuses. And just a question that got flagged that you may want to weave into your answer if you can is this question about how to engage faculty in this process, that sort of AI technology is an act of creativity. How do you create a space where faculty can engage with it creatively as part of their own sort of teaching and learning practices?
I'm happy to jump in. So I consider myself a real workforce development professional and practitioner. And so I look at everything as kind of an opportunity to kind of teach work-based learning skills. And I think there's a trend, right, as we look at the ROI and the value of education to kind of weave in work-based learning as a real kind of high impact practice. So when I think about AI, what's been really helpful for us is just to really double down on the consulting projects, the case competitions, the business challenges, how do you start a business where you're doing all of the research kind of using AI? How do you use big data sets and kind of create new products out there, and really focusing in on you're going to leave here learning the kind of top tools that professionals in this kind of discipline area or this industry sector do. You're going to learn interdisciplinary applications for the work. You're going to really kind of become an expert in the tool right now, but you're going to understand the foundations because there's going to be a new tool, next week, 2 months from now, 2 years from now. So it's less kind of indexing so much on the tool, but kind of really thinking about that interdisciplinary application of AI. And so that's been really, I think, what we've been honing in on in terms of just the kind of content and the integration of work-based learning using AI tools. And folks have been really excited about that. And we often sort of say, we're going to give you a portfolio of skills through kind of a bunch of your classes that will enable you to kind of absolutely nail the interview on kind of how do you think about integrating AI into kind of your workflow or your job or the role or the occupation. And that's been really attractive to folks. Looking at kind of, I don't have as good an answer on the kind of, again, with our faculty, given their practitioners, they're bringing it in, and we've created a collaborative for emerging technology where we're really are kind of rewarding faculty and highlighting faculty and doing salons with faculty where they are showing and showcasing how they're integrating the AI. And so we're really focusing on that teaching excellence side to kind of reward, to bring attention, to identify, to amplify those examples. A real quick answer to one of the webinar questions on successful recruiting cycles. So a little bit diversion from the AI, but just to say for us, I could say whatever the heck I want about how wonderful our programs are. The proof is in the pudding. And so our alumni do the job for us. And so when I think about the conversion of inquiry to application, we've actually created kind of alumni ambassadors on LinkedIn, because what we were finding anecdotally is that we would have like some super alumni who literally would kind of take on couple hundred inquiries from applicants every year. And so we've kind of formalized that role on the kind of Ask Me Anything on kind of LinkedIn ambassadors to really sort of do that work for us and help folks understand and see themselves there. But that's how we have kind of created this community. When you actually get to know who your online students are, their stories are nothing short of amazing. I mean, they are CEOs in their day job looking to upskill. They are Olympians or national champions in a sport who are traveling around the world and need an online program. They are all sorts of people. And when you start to really amplify who those students are, our faculty get really excited about teaching them, right? They are really excited to teach kind of, C-2 professionals in the marketing space. They all want to teach that group of students on how to kind of become even more excellent in marketing, for example. And so that's been really interesting, where it's taking the faculty away from, can you teach this in the pedagogy, to, don't you want to teach these students? They're incredibly kind of sophisticated, and that'll up your game as a faculty member. And so that's been an interesting way to reframe it, I think.
Thanks, Angie. I love that. I love that response. Kate, any thoughts on AI from your context? And I'm also going to add a question that was asked more broadly about, as you're thinking about standing up online programs, this is a question from one of our attendees. Is it better to think about existing programs and add an online modality, or is it better to set up an entirely new entity to sort of lead online? And I think that's really interesting given the ODU story. So curious if you could talk
Sure.
about
Yeah,
that.
happy to just quickly jump in. I think that what Mark and Angie shared was really how to help serve the student using AI. And I think one of the things we are doing, those things, of course, right? That study support, mental health support, all of those things. In addition, we're really looking at how do we serve staff using AI, right? So transcript evaluation tool, and Mark talked about this, instead of weeks, we go to hours. We're hours to minutes, right? We can turn a transcript very fast with a homegrown tool. Using AI to build a branded chat GPT so that you can very quickly get your messaging out there, and you're not spending a lot of time sort of from that blank paper draft. And so I just really admire the way our marketing teams are using AI, using tools built with AI to work smarter and faster. You still need the human element to do all of those things, review the transcript, look at the marketing material, but we can get there faster and we can scale with our audience, which has been really great. In terms of the modality question, we have, I would say, 95%, 98% maybe even worked with programs that are already on campus and moved those to online offerings. We do work really hard to respond to market needs. So this is not a program because a faculty wants to create a program. This is a program because there's a market demand. And so the only exception I would say is AI certification. We have 8 new certificates. That's responding to the market. That's not something we offered on campus. We just went straight to online modality for that. So I think it's the market need, which tended to live historically in marketing, if you will, in higher ed, right? And we didn't look at it like a business per se, but it is where we have revenue opportunity. And so we look at it that way at ODU.
Love that. Thank you, Kate. I mean, what I'm hearing from all three of you, and certainly something that I advise when I'm working with online leaders on campuses, is start with your learner, start with where they are, start with their needs, and then build sort of the programs around it. And I think that that really comes across, whether it's the integration of new technologies like AI, whether it's thinking about standing up new programs or new modalities of existing programs. What does your learner need? How are you going to have the greatest impact? And I agree with you 100%, Angie. That motivates our faculty every single day. Ultimately, they're all in the business of student transformation. So telling them the stories of the kind of students they're transforming, I think, is really powerful. One last question. I can't believe we're almost at the hour. Tons of stuff that we covered. One last question that came up that I think is really fascinating is in this moment of online engagement and encouraging faculty to teach online, how do you maintain a campus community amongst your faculty in particular who are dedicated 100% to online teaching? And I'm going to sort of open that to any three of you to answer because I think it's an interesting question broadly about community within the faculty. To be able to sort of meet the needs of learners where they are in this moment.
Well, let me jump in and just say you have to do it with great intentionality, and it needs to take place. You can't leave it to some just organic evolution. You have to develop programs and strategies and so forth. What we did, and this is a tribute to the faculty. We took, I call them Pied Pipers. Essentially, they were the leading faculty in online, whether they were in graphic design or whether they were in nursing or whatever program. And we basically knitted them together. A lot of times they might be unaware of what each other's doing. And we really consciously brought them together, almost like their own club, although it wasn't exclusionary or anything like that. It was really this group of people we're going to salute because you're doing amazing things. And then they became sort of this locus of energy that drew other faculty to them. And so what developed was kind of a cadre of people that others wanted to kind of be a part of. But we had to start with a great deal of intentionality. And one of the things we did, and I'll just say this for presidents and administrators, we so many times there's like, oh, we're going to have a seminar, we're going to do this, oh, we'll brown bag lunch, or we'll give you, we'll give you free Pepsi if you show up, whatever. We added 2 weeks salary to every faculty member's contract over 10 years ago and said a week in May and a week in August, we're going to devote, you guys organize it, to training and work and thinking and workshops about all this. We're going to pay you all to do it for 2 weeks. And it became really part of the fabric of the institution, and the faculty embraced it greatly because we invested. We said, look, this is important. You've got to make the investment in it. And trust me, it was a much smarter investment than over the decades trying to buy everybody a bad sandwich and a bunch of Coke and Pepsi to show up to learn things. And so it was a good, worthwhile investment at the outset.
I would quickly say that, and it's so easy to forget this and ask students all the time. I have so many student advisory groups for online students, for grad students, for undergrad students, for first gen learners. And, I organize the students monthly for the most part and just sort of say, you are helping me look at my blind spots. You're going to give me proposals that aren't $1 million, but you each get about $10,000 to give me proposals that will make the student experience better. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what's the blind spot. Tell me what would make your experience better. And that's the kryptonite to kind of any, lack of buy-in or kind of any grousing. It's just the students want this. And they've really pushed our school to go from a place that I think was wildly multidisciplinary to really interdisciplinary. And that is hard work, right? Like we are not wired to be very interdisciplinary, though we all say it. We are very multidisciplinary, right? And so students have really helped make that change. And sometimes, to Mark's point, it shows up as our students don't like one-on-one office hours. That's like a very 1990s kind of idea, but they love getting together in a group of 5 or 6 over a meal with faculty. And so that's how we do office hours now. Students kind of, don't want to hear kind of the hows, how to solve problems from administrators. They want to hear from peer mentors. We have a huge peer mentoring program that serves thousands of students every year because that's where students want to hear from. So those are some of the ways that we've created that bigger community, and faculty are at the center of so many of those conversations. They're invited in, they are part of the problem solving, but we ask students a lot what they need and want. And the fact of the matter is it's changing every year. What worked 2 years ago or what the pain point for students was 2 years ago is not necessarily the pain point this year. And so reminding folks to ask students what they're actually experiencing and what they want to experience. It's really fundamental, but I think it's been a game changer for us in terms of community building.
That's great. Thank you. We are almost at the hour, so I'm going to conclude our webinar. Really appreciate all of our attendees joining us today. I would just say it's a moment of flux, right? And so as you're navigating, it's the 3 questions we'd leave you to sort of ask on your own campuses is your brand position for national visibility in a search first marketplace? Are your growth priorities aligned with the learners that you're designing to serve? And are you thinking about AI capabilities for learner success? How are you thinking about that on your campuses? Please look to us if we can help and collaborate with you as you think about these questions on your own campus. Again, really exciting moment as we think about the online learner landscape. Let me end by thanking our incredible panelists for your time, your candor, the generosity of your advice as you navigated these on your own campuses. Mark, Kate, Angie, thank you very much. Wish you all a great rest of your day. And again, thanks to everyone who joined us today. If you asked a question that we couldn't get to, we will make sure we follow up with you directly. But take care, everyone. Thanks so much.